Hi, everybody. I'm Matt.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Marvel Reread Club. Hi, Steve. How are you?
Doing all right. You know, it's the holidays here, and I can tend to get a little stressed out for various things. So
yeah, I know.
That's kind of where I am right now. Trying to figure out how many of the exterior lights I'm going to bother putting up this year.
Yep.
All sorts of stuff like that. So,
my other podcast, A Good Story Well Told with Jonathan Auxier, we're recording a month in advance. We're not going to start posting the new season until January. So we're like, all right, let's not talk about the holidays. And we're like, no, we have to talk about the holidays. If we're going to talk about our lives, we have to talk about the holidays and just know that this is going to be a month out of date by the time it posts, because the holidays are a huge source of stress, and it's what we naturally want to talk about.
But you know, we are looking forward to actually getting to the holidays themselves, and my daughter coming home from college, and then she's going to be home for a full month. They've got a J term, and she isn't taking any in-person classes during her J term, so that means she will be hanging out here with us.
Great.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and get on into finishing up the regular issues of July 1968.
Yes.
We are going to be doing Fantastic Four number 76, Incredible Hulk number 105, Iron Man number 3, and Submariner number 3.
And then there was another book that we thought about covering that we think we're going to break off into its own episode, and that is the Spectacular Spider-Man magazine. So that leaves us just 4 books to cover this month. We should have a quicker episode. Should be lickety-split, boom, 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 boom. So let's do it. Let's go ahead and jump in with Fantastic Four number 76, Stranded in Subatomica. We once again basically have the Fantastic Three, Reed, Johnny, and Ben, who are fighting against a giant robot on the cover. We all know that Kirby can draw great giant robots. We all know he can do iconic designs for giant robots, but he has stopped doing that recently. And this is, once again, not an iconically designed giant robot. It's just looks like a purple dude wearing green underpants and a green headgear. Not an iconic robot. What do you think of the robot?
Not that memorable.
Yeah. So we jump into the issue. As you recall, last issue, Marvel has more books now, so it's taking us a long time to get back to issues we've been doing. So you may have forgotten what was going on in Fantastic Four. Galactus had returned to Earth in order to reclaim the Silver Surfer as his herald and possibly destroy the Earth. And at first, the Fantastic Four were like, we're going to keep Silver Surfer away from you. And then once they realized he was serious about destroying the Earth, they're like, nope, we're going to find him for you. We promise. And then all they know is that he went to Subatomica. And so they have to get in a special ship that would later be seen again in the John Byrne days, where they are in this little ship that shrinks down and goes to Subatomica. It's still not entirely clear whether or not they have to go into the exact same atom that Silver Surfer disappeared from and how on earth they would find that exact same atom. But they are zipping along through their thing.
They seem to imply that here, in that they need to find the exact location, and they go into this microscopic slide. Because, of course, if you're going into the microverse, you would want to do it under a microscope, which seems to be the implication here.
Oh, of course. So then, meanwhile, Crystal is still hanging out with Sue. Sue is wearing a big moo-moo that doesn't exactly show she's pregnant, but leaves open the possibility that she is very pregnant. Crystal also looks kind of pregnant, just because of the fashions at the time, just with her the shirt she's wearing.
That very loose top that she's got on there. Yeah, I can see that.
But then Sue has a doctor come by who says, at any rate, try not to let those terrible news stories upset you. And Sue's like, news stories? And Crystal's like, ixnay on the ooznay oristay. We were blocking her from all news.
It's like, oh yeah, don't think about that terrible, horrible thing. What? It's like, what?
It's a terrible doctor. So then, absolutely Curtis Art on page 4. Yes, as you say, they have to go into a slide in a microscope to try to find the exact atom. But the art of all of the molecules shooting by the ship as they go hurtling into this one-point perspective field of molecules on page 4 is absolutely gorgeous.
It really is. And one thing I'll point out here is that Reed is saying, at our present rate of speed, we're about to become the world's first micronauts. And, okay, 2 things to say about that. One, Micronauts. That's the first time we've ever heard that term before. But two,
Yes.
these guys have been to the microverse before.
Yes. True.
So they won't become the world's first Micronauts. They already are the world's first Micronauts.
Good point. So then you think that they would be searching molecule after molecule, atom after atom for the Silver Surfer forever. Nope, they find him right away. They find him in the course of 3 panels. And he is zooming around. He is ecstatic that he gets to zoom around in the microverse. Gorgeous splash page on page 6 of the extremely detailed and abundant and phantasmagorical microverse sprawling out in the background as the Silver Surfer enjoys flying around. They tell him, sorry, Silver Surfer, we're here to drag you back to Earth to force you to work for Galactus again, or else he's going to destroy the Earth. And they get in a huge fight, and they fight for several pages. But then it turns out that another resident of the microverse, who we have seen before, comes back, and this is the Psycho Man. So the Psycho Man has brought a robot. Is the robot just called the Indestructible One, or does he have another name?
I didn't notice.
So then the Psycho Man is like, hey, I've got a giant robot. I want him to attack the Fantastic Four. Like, this is like wonderful. I've needed revenge on these guys. And then they show up on my doorstep. Again, like, is it just a huge coincidence that the Silver Surfer ended up in the same microverse as the Psycho Man? Or is there just one microverse that you go to by shrinking down in any one spot? All very unclear.
I think that in the 80s, with Peter B. Gillis writing Micronauts, didn't he finally establish that the microverse is not actually a microverse, but it's some kind of other area of space that you somehow access by getting really, really small?
Yeah.
But one way or the other, even if that is what's later established, that is decades in the future.
But we should explain, for those who don't know, that later a toy company would start a toy line called the Micronauts. Marvel seemingly did not trademark the name Micronauts here because a toy line started some toys called Micronauts that Marvel did not own, but Marvel at the time was licensing a lot of toy lines to turn into Marvel Comics, so they did. So Marvel temporarily got the rights to the name Micronauts. Seemingly they should have gone ahead and trademarked it here and went ahead and owned it, but they didn't. So they had to license the name Micronauts for a while, which they did for many years, and then they lost it, and then they regained it, and then they lost it. I think they don't have it right now. But anyway, so Micronauts there's a whole storied history to the name Micronauts after it is introduced here. So then they are no longer fighting Silver Surfer. Now Reed, Ben, and Johnny are fighting the Psycho Man's indestructible android. They are fighting for quite some time until finally the Silver Surfer is like, wait, stop. They defeat the indestructible android. It vanishes. And, well, I guess they sort of defeat it, or it just vanishes because Psycho Man has called it back. And then Silver Surfer's like, I've seen how heroic you guys are. I forgot how heroic you guys are. I'm going to go back to the surface. Well, it's funny. At one point, the Psycho Man refers to the micro world above where the Fantastic Four have come from. Shouldn't that be the macro world above?
It should be, unless this is an even smaller world than
Yes.
another one. There's an intermediate world in between these two. I don't know.
So then you get this bizarre ending, utterly bizarre ending, just ruins the book, just makes no sense, where they're like, okay, we've come down to the microverse, we found the Silver Surfer, we're going to bring him back, we're going to deliver him to Galactus, we're going to solve everything. But then they're like, but let's not go. Let's just send the Silver Surfer back, trust him to go turn himself over to Galactus and save the Earth. And while we're here, let's go track down and kill the Psycho Man. And like, wait, what? That's not who you are. That's not who the Fantastic Four is. Like, that makes no sense. But they say, he's gone. Hurry, Reed. Let's get in the ship and follow him. And then Reed says, no! Exclamation point. There's nothing more we can do up there. But so long as the Psycho Man still lives, our work is unfinished here. We may never have a chance to return here again, so let's set controls to maximum penetration, and now it'll be the 3 of us against the total forces of Subatomica. Next issue, the power of Psycho Man, as we wonder shall Earth endure. So, like, seemingly they want to kill the Psycho Man here. Like, they say as long as the Psycho Man still lives, our work is unfinished. Therefore, our work will be finished when he's dead, and we're going to go take care of that, so we're going to go kill him. This does not seem like the Fantastic Four, especially when there's something very important to deal with back in the macro world.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. I'm gonna agree with you there.
And they say, like, oh, we may never get the chance to return to the microworld. Well, you just built a ship that can go back and forth, as you've just proven, so you can come back here anytime. Anyway, makes no sense. Looking through my notes, a couple other things to say about this issue. So at one point, Reed says there are 2 billion people living on Earth. So when Mary Jane Watson over in Spider-Man mentioned there were 2 billion people living on Earth, we could chalk it up to, well, Mary Jane hasn't been keeping up with the news and didn't know that in 1968, there were 3.5 billion people on Earth. And which is good, because otherwise it would be terrifying for the Earth's population to have increased that much since 1968. But now Reed, I guess Reed gets all his facts from reading Spider-Man comics. I don't know. But now Reed is claiming that there are 2 billion people on Earth.
Well, Reed is from an older generation, and I don't think that population statistics are the kind of thing that he is filling his mind with. Most scientists tend to be pretty out there when it comes to other non-science information. So I'll give him that.
I guess. But it's funny. They go to find Silver Surfer, and at one point they're like, let's grab him. And then they're like, hey, he thinks we're here to grab him. It's like, yes, you're literally there to grab him. That's why you came. You came to kidnap him and force him into slavery. And, it's not some big misunderstanding if he thinks that's what's going on.
Right.
And then they talk about, will the Silver Surfer give up his skyborn freedom to save mankind? And it's like, no, that's what he did before. He gave up his skyborn freedom. Now he'd be doing the opposite. Now he'd be getting his skyborn freedom back. Now he'd be able to zip around in space all he wanted if he's going to be Herald of Galactus. But he would be saving mankind again, but this time by getting his skyborn freedom back. Anyway, nitpick.
The way I took that is that he had found that here in Subatomica he could fly around a new universe freely, and that he was going to be going back into servitude.
Sure.
So that, yes, it was inelegantly put, but that's the way I took it.
Yeah. So then I just say at the end of my notes that this should end with Silver Surfer is going to go to the macro world and save the world, save Earth, but then the Fantastic Four should get kidnapped by Psycho Man. He wanted to kidnap them anyway. That would be good storytelling. If we want this massive 4-issue storyline to complete itself next issue with the Fantastic Four still in the microverse and Silver Surfer in the macro world trying to save the Earth, then just have the Fantastic Four get kidnapped. Don't have them decide to stay to kill the Psycho Man. Makes no sense. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So, I only have a couple of things to add. I will point out that on the splash page on page 1, the anatomy of Reed's left arm is a little suspect. I'm just sort of tracking that stuff as it creeps in more and more into Kirby's stuff here.
Yeah.
So anyway, I noticed that. Then on page 9, remember in the previous episode, we had the conversation with Jamal that involved tangents in art. And on page 9, panel 1, look at the place where Reed's head meets Ben's cheek and brow there.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, that is the worst kind of tangent there. You can't really tell, is that black line supposed to be Thing's face, or is it part of Reed's hair in the background? It makes it look almost like Reed's head might be in front of Ben's face, even though clearly his body is behind Ben's shoulder. And once again, this, nitpicky stuff, but just since we just had that conversation about tangents, I just figured I would point that one out, since that also is another example.
Yep.
Okay, so overall a fun issue, but you're right, it ends on an odd note.
Yes, it certainly does. But, the general idea here of zipping into the Subatomica and fighting Psycho Man's android and impressing the Silver Surfer with their heroism, that's all good, classic Fantastic Four stuff. It's just the last panel that screws it all up.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to The Incredible Hulk number 105, This Monster Unleashed. And on the cover, we just have the Hulk seeming to burst out of a city street and come at us menacingly.
Yeah, I love this cover.
Yeah, it's very well done. And could be the cover to any number of issues of Hulk.
Yeah, good generic. For that matter, This Monster Unleashed could be the name of any Hulk comic, and this picture of him emerging from the ground could have been the cover of any Hulk comic. And I always like good, iconic, timeless covers.
Yeah, this could be a poster.
Yeah,
All right, so in the previous issue, Hulk had said that he was going to take Betty with him unless Betty said Betty hates Hulk. And Betty has said everything to say, I don't want to come along with you, but has not said the magic words, I hate you. So therefore, he is not listening, and he is taking her with him. So the Incredible Hulk, this monster unleashed. Whoo boy, it took all these sedulous?
What is that word?
I don't know. I missed it when I read it the first time, and I didn't think to look it up. Maybe you could be looking it up while I read this here. It took all these sedulous stalwarts to create the spellbinding sensation. Editing by Stan Lee. Script by Bill Everett and Roy Thomas. Art by Marie Severin. Indeed. Inking by George Tuska. Lettering by Sam Rosen. Oh, yes, and we mustn't forget those indispensable scorecards by Honest Irv.
Yeah, so fascinating. Got Everett and Thomas writing together with art by Marie Severin, who presumably is doing a lot of the writing herself, inking by Tuska. And I assume that cover that I like so much is Severin inked by Tuska and looks great. And the art on the inside looks pretty great too. But yeah, having Everett involved just as a scripter or as co-potter, scripter or something, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So you find anything on sedulous?
Sedulous, showing dedication or diligence.
Okay. Well, as two brothers who were both raised by a mom with a PhD in English and have a pretty wide-ranging vocabulary, that's a new one to both of us.
Yep.
Anyway, Hulk is leaping over the city with Betty. She is able to convince him that if he is going to take her out of the city, that she needs to stop in her hotel room and get a change of clothes and some money. So he's like, okay, sure, I'll do that. Yeah. So it looks like they are going in through the hotel garage and happen across a couple of car thieves who specifically are using the Hulk's rampage to as cover, basically, for their car thievery. They take Betty hostage momentarily until the Hulk shows up and scares them off. But then before anything else can happen, he then turns back into Bruce Banner, and one of the thugs shoots a bullet at him right at that moment. And it's unclear where it hits. Later, it seems to be implied that it hit his leg, although we don't really see that here. I would like a little bit better visual storytelling on that, if that's the way things are.
Yeah.
We then cut to a container ship, and they end up sending out what looks like a torpedo at New York City. And it's a great skyline shot of New York City on page 4, panel 4.
Yeah.
Really like that. Although it doesn't look like a particular area of New York. It looks like it might be just sort of made up. But still, it looks nice. And so they send this torpedo, but it's not going to explode. Instead, we see that watery footprints seem to be coming out of where this torpedo hit. And we then get the backstory. These guys, I think, are Russian. I'm not entirely sure. But they're referring to their hated allies to the south, which I guess would be China. So hated allies seems like a weird construction, but okay.
Yes. Well, then later they say, not long ago, our accursed Eastern allies conducted a top secret atomic test.
Sorry, that's the phrase I was looking for. It wasn't Southern allies. Our accursed Eastern allies, yes. So they seem to be Russian, and then they're talking about the Chinese doing some nuclear tests, and it somehow ends up freeing from the ground a missing link that had been in suspended animation for reasons unstated for eons, and somehow the nuclear explosion let him free and turned him into a nuclear freakazoid monster.
So I feel like the missing link is an idea that was still around when we were kids. This idea that people who believed in evolution were having a hard time proving what they believed in because in the fossil record, there was a missing link, that there was some example of the evolution of mankind where there was a missing step in our picture of evolution, and we needed to find the missing link, and that somehow like this would be a weapon in the fight between the evolutionists and the creationists. And do you remember any of this?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But I get the impression that it was something that was still just left over in popular culture from, adventure pulps and stuff like that from earlier days. I'm pretty sure that science did not have any missing places in all of that. I think that's all taken from 19th century adventure stories or whatever.
See, I feel like science was still searching for the missing link when I was a kid. I feel like this was still considered to be a valid scientific concept of the missing link. And then at some point they're like, nope, we filled in all the gaps. There's no hole we're trying to fill in our knowledge of the evolution of mankind. I feel like there was some sort of announcement that was made to that effect at some point near the end of my childhood. But I never actually got that memo, and it's unclear to me. But anyway, okay. This is clearly in these 1968 comics, there's still this idea of the missing link.
Yes. Anyway, the Chinese decide now that they have this monster and they're like, what are we going to do with this thing? They're like, oh, put it in a torpedo and we're going to send it off to America to go ahead and wreak havoc. So Betty is getting Bruce in a car, presumably her car or rental car that she's got or something like that, and tries driving away with him now that he's Bruce again. But then he finds himself turning back into the Hulk seemingly randomly and tucks and rolls, jumping out of the moving car. He then wants to get away from the cops, so he knocks a hole in the ground and falls down on top of a speeding subway. I really love the shot of the subway tunnels on page 9, panel 2. I like how they even get the little slight arching shape of the bricks that are part of the ceiling of the subway tubes. Looks really, really nice.
Yeah, this seems to have been redrawn from photo reference.
Yes. So the Hulk then climbs his way back up out of the subway and into the streets. Apparently just happens to show up right next to the monster.
Really atrocious plotting. As I've said before, the whole point of a comic book story is to get the hero and the villain in the same place at the same time with a reason to fight. Here, there is no possible reason they end up in the same place at the same time, and they have no reason to fight.
Yes. Out of all the streets in this city, how is it that he just happened to come up right there, right next to this monster? On page 11, panel 5, at the bottom right-hand corner, Hulk says, now Hulk will roll whole street over the monster like concrete carpet. And so this is what the Hulk would later do to the roller disco devils in a Hostess ad many years later.
Yes.
So that is actually canon, one of the things that that Hulk does.
Yes.
However, in the roller disco devils, they were clearly murdered in that one.
Hey, man, they were roller skating around listening to disco music. I think they had it coming.
So, anyway, it seems that this monster is covered by some kind of radioactive crystals. It's a little bit strange. They are fighting until something about the radiation coming off of the monster ends up turning the Hulk back into Bruce Banner again, at which point the monster loses interest. Reed Richards has apparently assembled a device of Bruce Banner's own plans that is some kind of weapon to be used against the Hulk. And Reed Richards says, if he hadn't designed the plans himself for just such an emergency, I'd never have built it. And he's saying that I might take it away again if I change my mind. So Talbot and Rick Jones both head off with this device. Of course, why Talbot is allowing Rick Jones just to tag along with him here is, once again, one of the ongoing mysteries of this comic.
Yes.
So Hulk and the monster re-engage. They have, once again, if you have a fight with the Hulk, you want both knockdown and drag out. And we get both of those things here. So the Hulk knocks an abandoned building down to cover the monster in rubble. Talbot and Rick Jones find the Hulk and they're pointing the weapon at him. They fire it and it makes Hulk turn back into Bruce Banner. But right at that moment, the monster crawls out of the rubble of the building he was under and comes to attack them again. But at this point, the Hulk is nowhere to be found because he is now Bruce Banner. And at the end, it just says, would you believe to be Hulk-inewed? So they're still beating that dead horse. So overall, like you said, some plot holes that don't really tend to make much sense, but I did like a fair number of the visuals in the issue, and so yeah, I'll say I got my money's worth. How about you?
Yeah, I like the art. I still feel like, the highest and best use of Marie Severin is doing Doctor Strange, which she's no longer doing, and that's a shame, and I feel like she does a very good job on this book. I really like a lot of the art in this book. I love on page 13, just generally speaking, not just Marie Severin, but any Hulk artist, whenever they show the whole transformation in one panel, from Hulk to, some gradually morphing faces down to Bruce Banner in one panel. I always enjoy that. The missing link keeps changing what he looks like. He's hairy, and then he's pink, and then he's crystalline. And I'm like, if he's going to be called the missing link, he should just be hairy all the time. He should look like a hairy Cro-Magnon dude. And, a prehistoric looking dude. If he's going to be called the missing link, he shouldn't be pink. He shouldn't be crystalline. It doesn't make any sense. I thought that was not simple enough iconography. As I say, Hulk just randomly runs into missing link, and Marie Severin never the best co-plotter. But anyway, yeah, those are my thoughts on this issue. But I like the art a lot. I like, the missing link is a perfectly fine idea for a villain. Interesting to have Everett as co-plotter or co-scripter or whatever the heck he's doing. And, he's not doing a terrible job, but it's just an okay issue.
So one thing I just noticed when going through this, that final panel on page 20, Talbot shooting the gun at the missing link coming from off panel, does that look at all familiar to you? Like the hands coming in from the side and the gunshot going off?
Nope, don't think so.
Is it just me? Or does that look almost like it might be a reference or an homage to the cover of Marvel Comics #1?
Marvel Comics #1 from back in 1940 or 1939 or whatever?
Yeah, 1939. Yeah. I'm probably just making something up there, but I just pulled it up just to make sure that I, would that I wasn't entirely making things up. And no, there's some similarities there. And I don't know if, I don't think that Everett was the one who drew that cover, but it's possible he could since he did some of the storytelling and art on the inside.
Okay. Maybe he's just, maybe that's just in his muscle memory.
Yeah, that could be too. But honestly, I don't know who did the cover. I just know that it's possible he could have done the cover.
Yep.
Okay. Did I have anything else that I was going to say about this? Yeah, just at one point, Hulk says to himself, "The Hulk have no love for police, but not have love for glowing giant either." Somehow about have no love for seems a bit more of a sophisticated phraseology than I would expect from the Hulk. But the other thing is, saying negative things about your feelings about the police is one of those things that could get you in trouble with the Comics Code Authority.
Yeah.
Somehow Hulk seems to have a pass on a lot of this stuff, and I don't know exactly why, but I'm glad they were able to get away with giving us the character they did.
Hulk generally unenthused about police.
All right, so now it is your turn. Why don't you tell us about the Invincible Iron Man #3?
Alrighty, let me pull that up. The Invincible Iron Man #3, My Friend, My Foe, the Fearsome Freak. So you'll recall that a long time ago, there used to be two supporting characters in this book named Happy Hogan and Pepper Potts before they got married off to each other and ran off to elope and never appeared in this book again. Well, back when Happy Hogan was a regular character in this book, he at one time had turned into a gigantic Frankenstein-looking dude called the Freak. Well, now we have on the cover the Freak, presumably still Happy Hogan, carrying what looks like Pepper Potts, while Iron Man is roasting in a fire, trying to reach them. And it is shocking to have them back. It's like, wait, could this be Happy Hogan and Pepper Potts? Are they really back? Let's find out. So we had My Friend, My Foe, the Freak. Stan Lee coordinates another cataclysmic classic by Archie Goodwin and Johnny Craig, lovingly lettered by Artie Simek. So we've got shockingly few credits for a Marvel comic here. Stanley is editor, Archie Goodwin is solo writer, scripter, and Johnny Craig is both penciler and inker, and then lettered by Artie Simek. And Irving Forbush doesn't make any contribution.
He's really slacking off lately.
Yeah, exactly. I continue to love Johnny Craig's penciling and inking, and I like it a lot in this issue as well. Iron Man is flying back to Stark Industries when he suddenly sees that they're testing a rocket. They build all kinds of stuff here at Stark Industries. They're testing a rocket, and it's about to fall over, and he has to stop it from falling over. Now, this is like a pet peeve of mine. I never like it when Iron Man can, like, lift something very heavy when he's in the air. Because to me, it's like, okay, well, you're not really testing his strength then. You're testing his jet boots, which would have to be insanely powerful. You know, this guy is not Superman. He's not able to hover. You know, he would have to. Anyway, it always bugs me. But so then he manages to hold the thing up for a while until it finally falls down and crashes and everyone's life is saved. Meanwhile, he goes back to his headquarters and Jasper Sitwell is just hanging out with Whitney Frost now. She's just his girlfriend and is just hanging around with him at his work, at his office. Like, generally speaking, that's not cool. Like, you don't want your girlfriend just hanging around at the office with you, especially when she's secretly the leader of the mafia. And, which she is. I'm sorry, not mafia, Magia. Poor Jasper, he has no way of knowing I've met Iron Man before in the guise of Big M, head of the Magia. So it was a little unclear to you last time, Steve, whether or not she had actually been the Big M that Iron Man met, but yes, she was.
Yes.
So then Iron Man at this point has to, of course, go back to his office, and of course he's all woozy and has to hook up a big cable to his chest, as is always the case. And once again, he has to stay in seclusion and not come out, and there's a bunch of newspaper headlines. Stark in seclusion. Government demands explanation! Exclamation point. Now! Exclamation point. Playboy industrialist becomes recluse! Exclamation point. And so then, meanwhile, we cut to Happy Hogan and Pepper Potts, who are living comfortable suburban lives, and then they decide, our old boss is in seclusion. We have to go back and talk to him. And Happy sort of runs off with Pepper sort of reluctantly in tow. And once again, let's just point out that I like Johnny Craig's penciling and inking, but as with everyone else since Heck, no one is giving Happy Hogan the sort of personality that Heck gave him back when Don Heck was penciling and occasionally inking and presumably co-punning this book, where Happy Hogan had these cauliflower ears and he had this sort of broken nose and he looked like an ex-pugilist, which is what he was supposed to be, and he had a lot of personality. He also was always frowning and always mopey. He had a lot of personality, and he just hasn't had that ever since Heck left. Yeah. It's been very strange. I've never understood when comic book characters get less personality. Like, why not more personality? Why less? You sometimes get the feeling that subsequent writers or artists are like embarrassed by the old comics. They're like, oh, those old comics, you know, like, oh, things were so caricatured or cartoonish in the old comics, and we have to make things more normal and not odd. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Anyway, Happy Hogan goes and helps Tony Stark with what he's doing, but whoops, he absolutely walks into a cobalt bombarder. He, as part of helping Tony Stark, he gets bombarded with cobalt, which is one of their favorite things in the Marvel Universe.
So just to be clear, Tony Stark realized that his chest device was getting worn out and wasn't going to be able to keep his heart alive anymore. And so what he's doing is, because Happy is the only person who knows his secret identity, he's then using Happy and just talking him through building a new suit of armor that's going to better take care of his heart.
Yes. So then Happy gets bombarded with cobalt and he once again becomes the Freak. And Pepper has just been waiting in the waiting room all of this time, the seemingly weeks that they've been working together on this new armor. I guess maybe it's just been a couple hours they've been working together. It seemed like a lot of time had passed. Certainly, yes. Again, what is the news cycle? Time for, it seems like there's been time for more headlines, but Pepper is still just waiting in a very cool modern chair in the waiting room and for them to come out. And then the Freak comes out, picks her up, drags her off. Iron Man chases. They go to a construction site of a building that is being built. And Iron Man gets in a big fight with the Freak, has to save Pepper. And then finally, where does this gas come from?
It's from Iron Man. He somehow releases some kind of anesthetic gas.
Okay. As though in answer to Iron Man, a billowing mist seeps into the sealed compartment.
I thought it came from him. Yeah, he says, the strongest anesthetic ever produced. My oxygen supply keeps him from affecting me, but the Freak has nothing, and he's still fighting it. if this fails. So yeah, I guess it came from, I'm pretty sure it came from him, although yeah, they are a little ambiguous about that.
Yes. So then somehow a gas comes, knocks the freak out. Pepper is like, oh no, that was Happy. And they're like, yeah, we're going to take him away. We're going to uncobalt him. He's never going to become the freak again. And he's going to presumably go back off and live his happy retired life with Pepper Potts. And they're not going to return to this book as part of the cast. And I guess Iron Man's heart device is fixed now, because I'm sure that'll never come up again. And this is next issue, the Unconquerable Unicorn, who I think is returning. I think we've already had the unicorn many years ago in this book. Anyway, I like the art in this issue a lot. The penciling and inking, the story is just fine. It's kind of fun to see Pepper and Happy again. And although, you know, it's sort of the easiest thing to do with them is just return to the old freak days. But, and it makes no sense that Pepper has seemingly been waiting in the lobby for all of these, you know, days or weeks or months or however long they've been working on fixing the armor. But it's, but I liked this issue a lot, largely just because I liked the art. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, it was. This is a fun issue. Granted, I've never really liked the Freak. Something about it just doesn't really get me. Actually, the most entertained I've ever been by the character the Freak is when he showed up in the 3rd season of the What If TV show.
Yes.
That was fun. I liked that one. But yeah, just something about him just doesn't look. Anyway, I don't know. I find it interesting on page 16, panel 5, the bottom right-hand corner, the kind of abstract look that Johnny Craig uses to suggest this girdered out building, but it's just basically lines in 3 different directions, and that's like about it. But it works. It gets it across. Yeah, but the art is fun, and I absolutely agree with everything you said about Happy and his lack of personality these days.
Yeah,
but
it's a shame.
It is a shame. I really liked Happy. And for that matter, I liked Pepper before they dolled her up. You know, I think that she was a lot more fun when she was, you know, the kind of mousy secretary who wanted to, you know, who dreamed of being with Mr. Stark.
Before she started covering up her freckles with tons of concealer.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, that's all I have to add about that. Well, actually, not entirely. One of the things they built into this new version of the armor is that extreme heat or extreme cold will charge his armor. So when he got caught in a bunch of flames, he's like, oh, that's great. This is actually just charging me back up again. So that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed that. Oh, I'm looking at the letters page now. There's a letter from Bob Gale again, which gets a very long response from them. And then there's a letter from Jeff Fisher and Walt Simonson. At Amherst College in Amherst, Massachusetts, presumably our Walt Simonson. So we got 2 big future Marvel creators showing up here.
Yes. All right. So let's move on to Submariner number 3. Prince Namor the Submariner. Namor and Triton, terrific together. On a clear day, you can see the Leviathan. And this is not a great cover, especially seeing as how it's a John Buscema cover. I find it quite disappointing, and unfortunately I find that telegraphs what we're going to get on the inside. Do you have a different thought about this cover?
I don't know. I thought it was fine. I mean, the Leviathan is such a dumb villain. You know, this giant seaweed creature. It doesn't look any better on the cover than he looks on the inside. But I think that Triton and Submariner look okay. We sort of have a preview of the bizarre story we're going to get on the inside, which is a new version of the Defiant Ones, where they're handcuffed together in some sort of magical handcuff the entire time. On a clear day, you can see the Leviathan is a reference to the movie that had recently come out, On a Clear Day You Can See Forever, I think. I don't know if that itself was a literary reference or not.
Sounds like it was, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but I think cover's okay. I think I like it better than you.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. Triton and Submariner look good, but everything else on this cover looks pretty amateurish, which is not something that I expect from John Buscema.
Yeah.
So we see that Triton and Submariner are both still held captive in these little capsules by the Plant Man in his submarine, because once again, the Plant Man has a submarine for, I presume, reasons.
Yes.
And we see that he's got the giant seaweed that's attacking London. Stan Lee presents and ponders A Twin Titan Triumph by Roy Thomas writer and John Buscema artist. Inked by Frank Giacoia, lettered by Sam Rosen.
So generally speaking, Buscema penciling, Giacoia inking is a fantastic combo that we know to love. We will see if that continues to be the case on this issue.
Yeah, well, I really think that the design of the Leviathan is just does not hold up, unfortunately. Yeah. And they do not make it look believable or interesting. So the Plant Man is saying to Namor that he can be set free if he agrees to be Plant Man's slave. Again, remember, Submariner, one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe. Plant Man is Plant Man.
Yes.
How does he think this is going to work?
But so wait, first you've skipped over that. So the Plant Man is just sitting here thinking to himself, well, so when I started reading it, it seems like he's thinking to himself, it was in the slums of London that I grew to manhood, amidst fools who thought my ideas insane. Now at last I shall have my just revenge when I unleash the Leviathan. And I'm like, wait a second, he grew up in the slums of London, so he's like Cockney? And like, should I have been reading all of his dialogue in my head in a Cockney accent all this time?
Apparently so.
Should I have been going like, it was in the slums of London that I grew to manhood, amidst fools who thought my ideas insane? That's my Cockney accent. And,
yes.
I'm like, I had no idea. Like, he's not dropping his H's. He's not doing anything that they're doing no attempt to indicate he has any sort of London slum accent in his dialect in any way.
Which they do for many of the other characters in this story.
Yes.
So Plant Man is able to somehow teleport Submariner and Triton into another room in the sub. This is a massive submarine for all the room that there is in here. And there's some other plants, and then he has some kind of magic or super science like bond that bonds their wrists together, bonds Submariner's left wrist to Triton's right wrist. How all of this has anything to do with Plant Manness, I fail to see.
Indeed not. So, yeah, so there had been a very popular movie called The Defiant Ones, starring Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier as two escaped convicts who are handcuffed together. And then that became sort of a, doing a Defiant Ones style story became something that you could do. But the original story was sort of a metaphor for the racial question in America. This one is not doing that. But still, they think it would be fun to have them handcuffed together for the entire story.
But later in the 70s and 80s, wasn't there a pair of characters named Hammer and Anvil that were basically doing that almost, beat for beat?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, anyway, let me try to get through this more quickly here. So, the Leviathan is this monster that I believe is actually living, like, walking coral, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
rather
right.
Than
yeah,
seaweed.
It's not seaweed, it's coral, right.
Right, but you can't really tell just because it seems like Buscema and Giacoia just kind of gave up on giving it any sort of real texture to it, so it just looks like scribbliness inside of it there. But, yeah, they're afraid that the Leviathan is coming towards the castle, and they need to protect the queen. At one point, Submariner is still in the submarine and is fighting a cactus that can shoot its spines at him, which, all right, sure, why not?
Hey, at least it's a plant, man.
Yes, well, it's a cactus in a submarine.
Yes.
So Submariner and Triton end up busting out of their room, and Plant Man is like holding a gun behind his body, waiting for something. What he's waiting for, I don't know. You need to go ahead and use that weapon if you want any chance of doing anything here. So they then knock out Plant Man and still are chained together. Submariner can fly, Triton cannot, but they seem to occasionally forget that in the art, it seems, and then they have to make up for it in the dialogue. So, yeah, like on page 13, panel 3, you can see there that it does seem like, okay, Submariner is the one lifting the anchor and sort of dragging Triton along after him. but then there's another panel later where it looks very much like Triton is helping push something through the air, and they have to add into the dialogue, it's like leap as hard as you can.
Yep.
Anyway, so the Atlanteans figure out that Namor is still alive, and Dorma wants to order her flagship to go to him, but once again Vashti talks her out of it and says, no, you must stay here and be a leader to your people. She's like, you are right, Lord Vashti. My orders are withdrawn. So, and here it is, page 16, panel 4, where it really looks to me like John Buscema forgot for a minute that Triton couldn't fly.
Right.
It's like, leap, Triton, leap upward with all your sea-born might, as they seem to be swooping through the air. So they figure out that fire is harmful to the creatures, so then they end up getting some kind of burning debris. They end up fighting the creature with that. When it comes to the accents being spelled out in the spelling here, page 18, panel 2, there's a nearby refinery, and they say, it ain't possible, but I saw it. SAWR. That bloke picked up the whole bloomin' vat. So, they are putting that stuff in there for some folks, but I guess that Plant Man must have trained himself out of his accent. Who knows?
Yes. Plant Man earned himself a scholarship to Eton and managed to get all of his accent out of him.
Anyway, it seems that, so they're able to destroy the Leviathan. Apparently, for some reason, the Leviathan had something to do with the bond that was bonding their wrists together. Doesn't make any real sense why that would be, but it then disappears as soon as the Leviathan is defeated. Triton says goodbye. They part their separate ways, and Namor is thinking about the dread, loathsome visage of the human called Destiny, and is thinking about finding him to wreak vengeance. But at the end it says, next-ish, Atuma attacks the Atlanteans. Nuff said.
Yeah. This is a thing where you're reading a comic and there's a big overarching storyline going on, or you're watching a TV show, or you're whatever, and you're like, okay, big overarching storyline, get back to it. And then it's like, yeah, next issue this, next issue that, and they're like, we're going to go and do everything except for the big overarching storyline. Like, he's still thinking about it. He's still picturing Destiny at the end of this issue. But then it says next issue Atuma. This kind of reminds me of old X-Files, where it's like, I've gotten a key piece of information about finding my missing sister. And next issue, here I am out in some podunk city dealing with a werewolf. And it's like, wait, what about that information you had about finding your sister? And it's like, next issue, I'm in, some city dealing with, some sort of slime monster. And I'm like going, but, and this is like that sinking sensation when you're more interested in the ongoing storyline than the actual story is.
Yes. Okay, so I didn't have any further notes on this issue, so there's nothing else for me to go back to. Any other thoughts that you have on this issue before we sign off?
Yeah, so at the end, they're like, we defeated the Leviathans, we're no longer attached to each other, and let's just let Plant Man just go in his merry way. Let's not attempt to go defeat him or arrest him or send him to prison or anything. Yeah, the energy bands were attuned to the Leviathan. When it ceased to be, so doubtless did they. Plant Man assumes and does not actually check. But why don't they attempt to then arrest Plant Man? I don't know. He's going to go around in his submarine creating more mischief now. I like, we always talk about Buscema Tech and how is Buscema Tech developing. I really like the Buscema Tech on page 5, panel 2. The Plant Man is inside his Vega Ray.
I think it's a Vega Ray.
Oh, that makes more sense. Vega Ray. Okay, but then he's using it to animate coral, which is very much not vegetation. But yes. Anyway, and I should point out, they do mention when it suddenly turns out he's from poor person from London, there is a footnote that says, we probably forgot to mention that fact in Planty's origin in Strange Tales 113. Indeed, his origin had nothing to do with him being from London back in that terrible old Human Torch story. So, yes, I'm glad that you at least have some self-awareness that this is not something we have ever had any idea about before.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess that's my thoughts on this issue. I say at the end of my notes, crazy issue, pretty bad, art is good. Yeah, but you're right, though. Leviathan is a huge part of the issue, and the art is not great on the Leviathan. So even then, the art is letting us down.
Yes. All right. I think that we have made it through this one in record time.
Yes, we haven't even been recording an hour, and that's before editing. So because we'd originally planned on doing a lot more in this episode that we are not now doing. So we will just put this out as a quickie episode.
Yep. And and we're, like Matt said, we're considering various ways of handling the Spectacular Spider-Man magazine stuff, and we haven't finalized it yet, and we will let you know, or you will hear it when it comes.
Yes.
All right, so let's go ahead and say our goodbyes, and we will be back in the near future with more Marvel Comics.
Great. Okay. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for recording this with me. I guess we have finally, for the most part, other than Spectacular Spider-Man, we have finally wrapped up this epic month of Marvel Comics, July 1968. Lots of good comics, lots of weak comics, and but generally speaking, level of quality pretty high at this point.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. We always appreciate it. Take care and stay safe out there.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, we now have a Patreon where you can show your appreciation. If you've got a few bucks, head over to patreon.marvelrereadclub.com to support us. Also, you can still rate and review us at your podcatcher of choice, and that would be greatly appreciated as well. You can find us online at marvelrereadclub.com, as well as Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. See you next time.